Hello, good morning everyone, or whatever time it is wherever you are today. My name is Kathy Hart, and I'm here physically at the ACC Community Center here in Sacramento. This is a joint program with ACC's Senior Services for the Greater Sacramento area and also with the Renaissance Society at Sac State University. The Renaissance Society is for lifelong learners, and I know we have a number of people from Renaissance that have joined us online. We also opened this program up. It's a community program and it's been opened up on Eventbrite, so we may have people from all over. I would love to know, if you're not in the greater Sacramento area, if you could just put in the chat where you're located. We sometimes have people from different countries or all over the US, and I'd just love to know where you're located. So today we're going to have a really fun and simple, beginner-friendly watercolor. It's a snowman peeking out from the corner. I'm going to go through the drawing and then the actual painting. We will be doing it together. So let's talk a little bit about our supplies today. You want a pencil because you're going to do your drawing in pencil. I'm going to show you using a marker, but that's so you can see it online. You're going to use a pencil because that will help you as you paint your painting. You're going to want your watercolors and some water. I actually have two different brushes. You can use anything. This is just what I happened to grab this morning. I have a 5 round and I have an 8. So let me show you this way. Well, you can't really see them. But really and truly, you're going to be able to use anything. It's a fairly large painting, so if you have a larger brush, that's fine. No problem. We make it work. Remember, art's for everybody. And you want some water. I have a little cup of water here, and I also have a dryer, just in case. There's a lot of paint on this particular painting, and because I move quickly, we only have an hour today, and you will have a finished painting. Sometimes I might need to dry the painting, so that's what I have there. And I don't think I had this on the Eventbrite listing, but when I actually did this one, I used highlights. You can't see it this way. You will when we do a close-up. I used highlights with just some craft white acrylic paint on the eyes and a little bit on the nose and the hat. You don't have to do that, but that's what I did on the one that I have here. Okay, so let's get started with the drawing. Again, I'm going to do it with a marker, but you will do it with pencil on your either cardstock or your watercolor paper. So let's start at the bottom right. Let me put this so you can see it a little better in the camera. Okay, we're going to start with the bottom right, and we're going to start with the nose. So depending on the size of paper, look at your paper, and you can see here about the size of the nose. So I'm just going to do an arc, again in pencil. Okay, and that's the nose. And now I'm going to do the top of the head, another arc from the bottom. Let's see, I'm going to go a little more than halfway, and I'm just going to arc up like that. Trying to kind of follow the arcs. They should be similar. Okay. Now I'm going to do another arc, the top of the hat. Now this is not all the way to the bottom of the page, nor is it touching the page on the right. But it's another arc, so I'm going to go up. On my page, it's about 1 inch, but I'm going to do another arc, trying to follow the same line, and then I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to kind of curve it in to the top of the snowman's head, like this, on both sides. So that's the bottom of the hat. Okay, and now I'm going to do this band. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and go all the way to the top, and we'll come back and do the band in a second. So I'm going to start, let's go on the right-hand side. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to go all the way to the top of my page. Okay, this is the side of the hat. Just need you guys to be kind of quiet, okay? And then on the left side, starting at the top of the hat, same thing, going up with a bit of a curve. Okay, so those are the two sides of the hat. Now I'm going to do this little arch up here at the top, which is the top of the hat. Okay. Now let's put that ribbon across, again about, on mine it's just a little, about an inch or so. I'm going to go across, that's where it's going to be a ribbon. I'm following the same curve. And the other thing that I'm going to go ahead and do in pencil are the 3 berries and a holly leaf. And you can do 1 or 2 holly leaves. So I'm going to do a little circle here for berry number 1, and I'm on the left side of the hat. I'll do another circle for berry 2, and I'll do a 3rd circle for berry 3. So that's at one side of your hat. And now I'm just going to do a little holly leaf, which is just this kind of scallop little leaf. It's very recognizable as a holly leaf. So I'm actually going to do 2 off the hat. Just doing these little scallops. There's 1. And I'll do a second one down here. Like that. I'm not going to pencil in these lines. We're just going to paint those in. But I do want to pencil in the eyes. So the eyes are oval. You want to kind of figure, okay, where's the center? And then you want them pretty, a little bit equidistant from the center. So they're ovals. I need to turn my paper to do a better a little oval here. So I'm going to do 1 eye on the left side and another eye on the right, both just ovals. And you don't need to be any more complicated than that. You could just have those eyes be black as though they were coal with a little bit, you can see here, I'm going to lift this to the camera. You can see on my eyes I did a white dot of acrylic, and I'll show you how to do that. But I also did a very, very, very thin line of blue on my eyes. You can kind of see it there, sorry. There we go. So I'm going to draw that line. You do not have to. If that feels like it's getting too complex, don't do it. But I'm going to pencil in, remember I'm pretending I'm using a pencil, 2 little lines here that I will add blue to. Not necessary. And this is your drawing. Okay? So I'm going to put away my pen. And I'm actually not going to use this to paint. This was just so you could see how I drew it. And I'm going to get now, I've already done a pencil drawing on watercolor paper. That's what I have here now. And I'm going to do my watercolor on this. So I already have my drawing. And I'm going to, let's see, I have to kind of think about how we're going to do this. So I'm right-handed, so I don't want to be putting my hand over wet paint. So I think I will start with my black. So I'm going to take my paints. I have very inexpensive paints. These are just, craft paints. You can use anything. You can use Crayola paints. Don't ever feel like you have to spend a lot of money before you can do watercolor. You can use anything, and then as you get more experienced, you might want to invest in some maybe more higher quality paints and paint brushes, but the idea is to have fun and use what you have. So I'm going to start by taking my paintbrush and I'm going to wet the black spot. So that's the top part, and it's this little rim, I guess it is, brim actually. So I'm going to wet those 2 areas. Actually, I'll just do the top part first because it's quite a bit of space to cover. So I'm just taking plain water and I'm wetting it up to my pencil lines. Right, I'm just wetting it. We're going to do a technique called wet and wet. And you have to move a little quickly depending on where you are. If it's warm, we're in a very nice studio here. It's a little warm, but actually very comfortable, but it's warm for the paint. So I have to move a little quickly. And you could actually just paint it. I'm just trying to teach some technique. So this is called wet and wet technique. So you have the area you want paint to be in is now wet. I'm going to take my color from my palette. This is black, and I'm just going to drop in the color. And kind of let it move all around. See how I'm just moving that? And because there's water there, it's just going to follow where the water is. I'm helping it. Okay, and don't forget, you do not need to just paint your picture as it would be displayed. If it's easier for you to paint, see how I'm moving it? I'm going to move it over here because it's easier for me to paint it this way. So I've turned it upside down. Perfectly fine. I'm just filling in paint in that hat. Sean, has anyone told us where they're from? Is anybody from outside the area?
Yeah, we got people from Hawaii, the UK, New York, a lot of people from the UK.
Awesome, welcome, welcome. We are delighted that you could join us today. That's one of the great things about technology is now we have the ability to connect with people all over the world. We're in the Sacramento, California area, but we are delighted to have everyone join us no matter where you are. So I've done the top of my hat. Now at the bottom, I'm just going to show you, you don't have to do wet and wet technique. I'm going to take paint. I have not wet the brim. I'm taking paint directly from my palette and I'm just going to paint it. I'm following those arcs. And I'm just moving the paint in the area. Following those arcs. I'm going to turn mine again because it's easier with it upside down on this side for me. Okay, we're filling in that brim. And you can always in watercolor go back over it to make the color darker. You may hear an artist, if you're watching a tutorial, talk about their base layer. So you can see I'm using different paints than what I used on this one. And you can see this is a much darker black. But if I wanted this one darker, I would just do a second coat. Okay, so we should have the brim and the top of the hat painted in. What I'm doing here is sometimes I'll see where there's maybe a little more standing water or a lighter color, and I'm just kind of moving the paint to make it a little more even. Over here I've got a little bit of a bloom. Let's come down to the eyes. And one thing, if you're going to do this line of blue, let's actually do that first. If you're not going to do the line of the blue, then you don't need to do it. If you're just going to have the black coal eyes, that's fine. But I'm going to do a little tiny line of blue. I'm actually switching paintbrushes, and I don't need a lot of water on this. So after you load up your brush, if you want to just make sure it doesn't have a lot of water, just tap your paintbrush on a paper towel. I have almost no water coming off. Let me show you what it looks like when it's got more water. So now I have more water on my paintbrush. I don't want a lot of water, so I just tap it on my paper towel. That takes off the excess water. Okay, so I'm going to, right inside my ovals, I'm just going to do a little bit of a blue line, just a tiny little thin blue line. I'm going to turn my painting so it's easier for me to do it. And I'm just going to go swoop and swoop. So inside my ovals, I have two little thin blue lines, and I'm rinsing out my brush. It's not a lot of blue. So let's let that dry because we don't want to add the black right now. It would blend with the blue. So let's go down to that nose, that red nose. Now I want to just show you something. What you can do is kind of sometimes you want to actually leave white in your painting as a highlight. That's one way to get this effect, or the other way is to come back in with acrylic or other paint. You can't really do white paint easily on top of it, but acrylic paint you can. So I'm going to go ahead and just paint my whole nose red. I'll probably have to do 2 coats. We'll see how dark it is. So let's fill that in, making a nice arc. Okay, we're just filling in the nose with red. So we should have the hat, the top, the brim. If you're going to do a little touch of blue in the eyes, that should be painted, and then your red nose. I'm rinsing out my brush, patting the extra water off. If your brim and the top of your hat are dry, we're going to go ahead and do this middle band part right here, this green band. Mine is still a little wet, so I'm going to you can use a hair dryer, or this is a different kind of dryer. I'm just going to turn it on for a second so I don't get any blending between the black and the green that I'm going to add. This will just take a second. I'm going to dry it. Okay, so I have a light green. If you don't have a light green, you can take one of your lighter green colors and add a little yellow and then just quite a bit of water, and that's going to give you a light green. I'm going to go ahead and just activate my light green, kind of a lime green is what I have. Now you want to try to avoid the berries. So I'm going to put, some green over here in the corner just because that's what it looks like in my picture. And I'm going to paint green this whole band here and this little bit in the corner. But try not to paint where the berries are. You can go over it. It's red or pink is a darker color, but still it's kind of nice if you can avoid it. And I'm just going to put on that color, that green, right up to the black hat. Just painting that in. I'm just doing it what's called wet into dry. So my paintbrush is wet with water and with paint, and I'm putting it directly on my paper. I'm going around my berries a bit. Again, I'm turning it so it's easier for me to paint. And don't forget, if you've got a little space in the corner, you want to make sure that that part has the green band as well, right around your berries. Okay, so we should have our green band in. Rinsing out our brush. I'm going to switch to my slightly smaller brush just because I have one. And I'm going to go ahead now and do my holly. So I'm using, as you can see here, a different green. So a little darker green or a Christmas green if you have that for the holly leaves. Okay, coming out from the brim, from the ribbon, whatever it is there, I'm going to just paint in those holly leaves. I think we'll leave the berries for a few minutes just to make sure that the light green ribbon is completely dry. Okay, so I have my two little holly leaves done, the hat, the top and the brim are done, and the green ribbon is painted, but I haven't done the highlights, the lines yet. All right, let's go ahead and start on the eyes. Now, if you don't have acrylic paint and if you want to try this, another way to leave some white would be to very, very small little spaces, little kind of holes. You can either draw this with the pencil, whoops, sorry, or just do it as you paint. You want to leave some white space. If you have acrylic paint, you can paint the whole thing except for your blue strips. So by not painting these two little dots that I have in the eyes, you give the illusion of a highlight. I'm going to go ahead and paint it because I brought acrylic paint, and I can just put the acrylic paint on, and it's easier, and you don't need a highlight. Yeah, that's not required. That's just how I did this painting. So I'm going to take the same black that I used for the hat, and that's what I'm going to use for my coal eyes, and I am not going to cover my blue line. I'm going to go right up next to it, but I'm not going to cover it. So I'll stay within my oval, and I'm just going right down alongside that line if you put blue in. You can see I'm flipping my page several times because I want it to be easy for me to paint. So it's whatever position makes that easiest for you. So I've done one side on the right eye. I'm going to do the other side now, not going over my blue line, but just right next to it. I'm actually going over kind of a second time because I want that to be really, really, really dark black. So you can see I've just got a little hint of a blue in there. My right eye is done with the black, so I'm going to do my left eye. Same thing, right next to that line of blue if you added it. Just bring it right alongside. Finishing up my left eye. One of the hardest things for me is to make my eyes as close to identical as possible. For some reason, I really struggle with that. But it's all fun and it's all good. If it was perfect, we would do it on the computer. This is art, done by hand. The next thing I'm going to work on will be these three berries, and I want to show you something. This is where I've left a highlight. Let's see if I can get it close enough to the camera so you can see it. Okay, no, there we are. Okay, Can you see how I've left a tiny little line of white? I actually didn't paint that in, I left it blank. That's the way you can have a highlight just by not painting. So I'm going to try to do something similar with my 3 berries. I'm going to paint all but a tiny little line, and if you don't have a highlight, that's fine. But I just wanted to tell you that is a way you can do it. I used kind of a pinky red. You can use whatever color. If you'd rather use red, I think I'll use my same kind of pinky red for the berries, and I'm going to try to leave that little highlight. So I'll go around, and this is really hard to show on the camera, but I'm just going to not paint in one little spot, and that's how you get a highlight. Now it makes sense if these are very close together, so the light source would pretty much be hitting it the same direction, so you'd like to have your little highlights in a similar part of each of the berries, because just think that, you know, the same light is hitting it. So there would be a tiny highlight in a similar spot. Again, that's not critical, it's just something if you've done watercolor before, maybe you haven't tried to leave a tiny little spot out that you haven't painted for a highlight. So I wanted to show you that that's one way to get that accent. So I kind of go around my berry with the color, and then I make sure not to paint a tiny little spot in there. So that's what mine looks like. And you can see they are in a similar spot on each of the berries. It's not like I have a highlight on the bottom of one, on the top of the other, or the right and the left. I tried to do it in a similar spot. That's one way to have a highlight, which you could have done with the eyes, but I'm going to go ahead and use white acrylic for my eye highlight. You guys are doing great. Like I said, if you want, you can go back in and make your hat darker. Let's go ahead and paint. I'm going to do a second coat on my red nose just because it's a little lighter than what I want. So I'm just going to pop another layer on top of my base coat just to give it a little more color. And that'll dry nicely. We're not going to be working. Oh, that's right. We have to do the head of the snowman a bit. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of the lines. There's no right or wrong way. This is just what I did. So I have several colors in there. I did some red, some blue, and yellow, kind of making a little bit of a plaid. You don't need to do any stripes. You could do dots. You could do just stripes of one color, whatever you want. But I think I'm going to do a couple little stripes. I'm going to start with my vertical, but they're not straight. I've kind of curved them just a bit. Okay, so I'm going to put in a few, I think I'll do some blue. And I'm using my smaller brush that has a nice tip so I can get a very fine line. And you're going to do light pressure, and you're just going to give a slight arc. Okay. And I'm going to do that right on top of my green. Let's see, I think I want to start by the berries so I don't have an issue when I get to that side. So I'm just going to start here and go whoop. Again, this is it's not required, but it just kind of gives it a little more of a festive hat. Slight curve. Oops, that one was pretty straight. So I did my arcs, my vertical arcs, and now I'm going to follow the brim, and I'm just going to do 2 lines following the brim, the long way, horizontal. I'm also going to do that in blue. And we're going to leave that ribbon part alone for a minute, because if we were to add another line right next to a wet line, the colors would blend, and we don't want blending right now. So now I'm going to put just, look at the, I think you can, well, not really, you can't really see the difference in the camera, but on the, let's see, maybe if I lift it, yes, okay, I think you can see it if I lift it compared to this one. See how the bottom one is the painting I'm working on right now. That snowman is pure white because I've not added any color to it. The top has a very light kind of shadow with blue. So your lightest blue, very, very dilute. You'll want to test it. So I'm going to take my lightest, I'll take one of my light blues. I actually, in this particular set, I'm going to use my bigger one. I have a white, so I'm going to add a little white. But if you don't have white, that's okay, because you're just going to make it very, very, very dilute. I'm going to add just a touch of gray, just because I have that in this set. Let me see. Oops, that's very gray now. So I'm just testing the color on a blank piece of paper here, and I think I have a color I like right now. It's kind of a light blue-gray. You don't have to do this. It'll just help frame the top of your snowman's head. I'm not going to actually do the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of shadow it. So I'm going to start with this very dilute light blue. I'm going to start with it over here on the bottom left side. And I'm just going to put a little bit of color down. You can see, you can barely see that mark. Okay? I'm going to go under the hat all the way across. Okay. So now what I don't want is a hard line. I know it's hard to see, but you can kind of see that there's a hard line where there's the gray and then it goes to the white. So I'm going to add a little bit more coming down, kind of on the edge of the paper on both sides. I'm going to add some more color. I'm going to put a little bit, I think, around the eyes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clean, wet brush, and it's called blending it out, where I'm going to get rid of those hard lines. I just kind of pull some of that color in towards the center of the snowman's face, and it softens it. So you shouldn't have a hard line. Cardstock doesn't do this as well as watercolor paper, but you still can do it. So I'm just trying to blend in a little bit of that shadow color, so it's not a line on the page. But a lot of my face, I'm just moving water around. I'm not using really a lot of color. It's very, very light color. Then if you want to go back in and make a few areas that are a little, have a little more accent color, that's totally fine. I may try that over here on the left side, because I'm going to have the light coming from the right. So I may make a little more shadow along the bottom left. Again, blending it out. I don't want a harsh line. It's a very subtle bit of color, but it does help give your character, your snowman, some character. Okay, we're doing great. Let's just add a few more lines following the, if you put blue, I'm just going to add maybe some red and a little bit of yellow, just to give it a kind of a plaid look up in that ribbon part. I'm going to add it, I think I'll just keep the blue line going across, and I'm going to add some of additional color to the horizontal. So pretty much right next to my blue, I'm just adding some red. Following the same curve. And then I think on the other side, because remember, I don't want to put it right next to that wet red, I'm going to do some yellow on the other side of my blue. Also going vertically, same curve. Okay, and I think that's it for the lines that I'm going to do on that ribbon. I'm not really going to do anything else to my hat. I'm not going to do a second coat. You can, feel free. But I want to show you a really easy way to do a highlight. So I'm taking just this inexpensive craft acrylic paint. I'm going to take a tiny, it just takes half a drop. Let's see if I can just do a small amount that I put out next to me. And here's what I use to get a great circle. A Q-tip, a swab. So I'm just going to put that in the paint, just not even the whole thing because I don't want a super big highlight, but I want that white highlight in there. So on the top right hand side, because the light source is coming this way on my painting, that's why I have a shadow on this side of the face. I'm going to do a little dot on the right eye, and then a little more paint, and I'm going to do a little dot on my left. And that just kind of sparkles the whole painting up. Okay, so I'll let you work on that. I'll let you finish up your drawing, your painting, but I do want to show you we have a class that is scheduled. It will be in the Renaissance catalog for lifelong learners. It'll also be in the ACC online registration. It'll be March 15th. We're going to do an easy spring floral at 11, and this will be the painting that we do. It's basically one stroke where you learn how to do those kind of like those leaves off of a branch, but we're going to do it in a really fun design. So as I've said in previous classes, the most common thing I do with watercolor paintings is I make them into cards. So I did a little watercolor around the edge. This is I did spring colors, and then I made a card. And I have an envelope that I actually do a very small matching bit of those. Sorry, this is mirror image of what I think it should be. So this is the set that I made, and I will be teaching you how to do that in March. So if there's any questions, we've got a few minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we are good to go. And you will have a simple little festive snowman to prop up somewhere in your house that reminds you all the time you are an artist. Sean, any questions?
Mine doesn't look much like yours, but it was fun. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Well, that's the main thing. That is the main thing. Enjoy the process.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much for the class.
Oh, glad you could join us.
Yeah. Ah, okay.
Nice.
Is this going to be available on YouTube or somewhere to see it again?
Yes, and if you are registered through Eventbrite or Renaissance Society, you'll automatically, I will send out an email with the link to the recording.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said that in the beginning because I know sometimes people get a little anxious. I might be going too fast for them. But yes, I will send out the link, and you can watch it or share it, whatever you'd like to do. There's other recordings. It'll be on the ACC YouTube page, and they have lots of really, really wonderful classes you can listen to. It might be cooking, it might be about healthy eating. They have a lot of movement classes, wonderful educational programs. So check those out. They're a lot of fun and very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope to see you in the spring. Have a safe and happy holidays.
You have a happy holiday too. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So on